All right, welcome everyone. I'm Wes Warren. I'm here with Greg Stanley, and today's topic is how do you know you've gone or you've asked too much from a patient in your treatment planning? And what does that really mean when I say too much? Meaning that you're moving at a pace when you're asking a patient to do more dentistry than maybe that they're ready for. And and the logical conclusion is, well, I don't do that, or maybe I do, maybe I don't. Well, it's not so easy to figure that out because a lot of times patients will actually do the work, but almost do it with buyer's remorse. And so you can actually get very high case acceptance, but it has other impacts on the practice. That's what we're going to talk about today. So, Greg, what have you learned about this? What things have you observed over the years when you're talking about a doctor that might be, I would say, over presenting, asking patients to do a little too much?
It really does impact your life, your personal life, as well as your practice. It's the equivalent of pulling a burden uphill. Let me explain. When you push too hard for treatment, a lot of times people feel the pressure from staff wanting more money after COVID, or the rent's gone up or whatever. And so they know they can't raise their prices. They've already done that. So they start to push harder for more treatment that they're seeing. We're not saying they're selling something they don't actually believe in, but they start pushing harder for getting the treatment to get it done now, either today or at the next appointment. And it leads to, if they push too hard, and we wanted today, Wes, give them some tips on how you know you've been pushing too hard. If you push too hard, you find yourself naturally turning to marketing, and that's where you find yourself on an uphill slant. Life is more challenging. You got to have better staff, better compliance, more engagement, more motivation. In other words, it takes more from the whole practice. A lot of doctors are used to driving the practice for their own personality and charm, and they just got to drag the staff along. But when you start overselling and have to turn to marketing, that's a team effort. I don't care how you go about it.
I would say another thing that I look for in trying to uncover if this is happening would be referrals to the practice. So this is patient to patient referrals. How many is the practice getting? And what's a normal amount? What's a good amount? Usually around 40, at least 40% or higher of the total patient base, new patients are referred by other patients, at least. And with a minimum around 20 a month, 20 referrals a month. If you're not getting those numbers, it's an indication that that could be a problem, that you are pushing a little too hard in getting patients to do treatment. Another indicator is just tracking your case acceptance, not the dollar amount that's accepted, but your batting average. So this is, we saw 10 new patients. How many of them accepted something on their treatment plan? Is it 6? Is it 5? Is it 8? Is it 4? Anything 5 or below, and it's there's some kind of problem. It might not be that you're overpresenting. It could be other issues like what we've talked about, Greg, for years as waffle words, just your language and how your treatment plan. But a lot of times it's the amount that you're asking the patient to do on that first visit. So those are a couple of things that I typically look at. Like you said, it kind of creates a burden for your whole life. The stress of you're living the salesperson's life. They have books on this, Death by Salesman, where you're living this miserable existence where you need to close the deal, and you're constantly going to the front. Did they buy? Did they do it? When you start seeing yourself do that and behave that way, and are they calling those patients back? Did they call? We got all these open treatment plans. Are they calling these people? When that's your response back, it's an indication that you're probably too hung up on case acceptance, and it indicates that maybe you might be pushing a little too hard. It's potentially what we'd like to see is a higher batting average, typically around 60, 70% of patients accepting, as opposed to 40 or 50. And 50 is a maintenance level for a practice, meaning the amount of patients leaving and the amount of patients that accept and move forward with their treatment and stick with the practice, your practice won't lose patients, but it won't be gaining patients. for the practice to really grow and for it to have inertia where it feels like it's busting at the seams and hygiene's building, you got to have case acceptance around 60, 70%, maybe even 80% to have that effect. So remember, when patients don't buy the dentistry that you present as a new patient, they tend not to stick around very long. Maybe one more visit and that's it. Getting high case acceptance means you're going to have good retention in the practice. So retention is another indicator, Greg. Is the practice, does it feel like it's growing? Does it feel like hygiene is just busting at the seams? I just literally don't have enough space to put people. Those are all indications that you're hitting the target, with case acceptance.
You
Those
know, a lot of it has to
I've
do,
learned.
what's that?
Yeah, those are the things that I typically look at.
A lot of it has to do too with the personality of the doctor involved. If you're slightly extreme, if I could use that term, for example, some of you are extremely non-assertive and you have a hard time coming to the point, asking for the treatment. Others are very dominant and almost enjoy the patient fighting with them a little as they overpower them with their unassailable logic and force. And so if you're in the extreme category, you really have to be careful. In fact, my suggestion, Wes, is that our next podcast be about how to perfect case presentation. This one is about how to know if you're not doing it right. It's that simple. So if you're an extreme personality, very dominant, let me give you an example. I've had some doctors over the years that actually brag to me how good they are. I'm just incredible. I get everybody to do this. And I look at their numbers, they got 4 new patients a month who probably walked into the practice by accident thinking it was a place to drop their dry cleaning or something. And the doctor just overwhelms, oversells. When I was in the sales world, they called it the wedge and mallet close, driving it down somebody's throat. And though you may not think you're doing this, a very sensitive patient will see that you are in fact overwhelming people. We have a saying, overwhelmed people don't buy less, they buy nothing. Can I add that to your list, Wes, of things that are a dead giveaway?
A lot of zeros.
Selling. If you're
Yeah.
getting, these people came into your office, they're in front of you and they buy nothing, that's a symptom that you can check off the list. What we like to see when we're doing marketing is everything going well enough that you can indulge in what we call 2-step marketing. In other words, we're going to do a little bit today. I see some things that really can't wait here. Let's get you on the schedule, or let's do it while you're sitting here. In other words, you do a little bit so that they become a patient, and then it's really hard to overwhelm them. So what you're saying, Wes, is the first thing to go really is referrals. Some people like you and like the office, but they don't think anybody else will like to be treated this way.
There's another thing. So you talked about personality. So obviously, if you're assertive personality, this is a giveaway that you need to be concerned about. This is definitely, you should look into this. But another thing that can fool you is when you're passionate about something you've learned. So you might not be assertive, but if you really drank the Kool-Aid on some new procedure, LANAP or perio, something that you've really just got passionate about, and the passion is in your bones, that's also a giveaway that you could be overwhelming people. When you're more passionate than they are, you want to just overpassion them about what you've learned. And it makes people just want to withdraw.
Sometimes you can get them caught up in your passion until they walk out of the office and go, what was I thinking? I went in there to get this and I got that,
Yeah, so we do see that. So it's 2 things to look at in your personality. One, am I highly passionate about certain things that I learn about in dentistry and really want to just share that passion? And the other would be your personality, if you're super assertive.
That passion too can be, you're a hammer and everything is a nail, everything's soft tissue management or LANAP, or we're not against those things, but they don't apply to everybody,
And it's how you're perceived, so how you educate the person, it can be much, it can be it's just like selling your political opinion, sometimes it doesn't go down well, and being super passionate about something. Oh, sleep apnea, TMJ issues. There's all kinds of different things people get passionate about. And some people, it's occlusion, it's about quadrant dentistry. They get really passionate about what they're learning out there, and they can overdo it, over rev where the patient is at. Hey, I just came in because this tooth hurt.
It's a misalignment too. Sometimes we're marketing for discounted hygiene, for example, and they come in and hear a real passionate story about something else. You know who really has the inside track on this usually is your own staff. They kind of identify with patients. Most of your staff are not filthy rich. They identify with patients that have bills to pay. And when you're done with the presentation, a lot of staff are thinking, wow, I couldn't have paid for that. I couldn't have done that, or I wouldn't have bought that. Some staff will say, we need to go, we're skipping a step. That's what they'll tell you. We haven't built a relationship enough or whatever. So Wes, let's kind of conclude this. At a future date, we'll really get into some secrets of case presentation so that you can get the very, very best outcome, but some bear traps not to step in.
Absolutely. Okay.
I think you really outlined don't get passionate about what they didn't come in for. You might decide whether or not you're going to work the two-step program. Are you going to do a little dentistry now and let them develop the relationship with your office? We can check that off. If you're not doing that, if you're not getting referrals, and there's another one too, man. Like you said, if patients aren't coming back, we know that certain areas where there's a lot of apartments, people move to a different area and they go to a different dentist because it's no longer convenient. But if they're still in the area and they're going to somebody else's dentist, another friend of theirs has a dentist, that's probably not a good sign. Anything you want to add to this list?
No, I would definitely think that the ones that we highlighted are the big ones. So look at your referrals. Hey, look at your personality, your passion, or your assertive, non-assertive. That's also indicators. Referral rate, and then retention of new patients. Are they sticking? Is hygiene busting at the seams? These are all the number one classic indicators. Yeah.
Let me add one. You might say, if you're not handling this right, it's like drilling a hole in a bucket you're trying to fill. You can try to fill it faster and faster and faster, and comes more and more expensive. And the people flowing through your office don't stay. They don't trust you. They let you know they don't trust you. And it becomes kind of a tormented life that this doctor lives. They're the ones thinking about, how do I get out of this practice? How do I have a more fulfilling life? Because it's not in dentistry. And in truth, that was probably something in most cases you actually created for yourself. But you're saying, Wes, that we can change that. I like that.
Oh, yeah. The thing that's really important, probably more than this, because this is your practice, you've survived for years, obviously. But when you bring on associates, you have to be a master at spotting this stuff. You've got to decide if somebody is missing the mark, and really what happens is it's called a churn. You're churning patients. You become a dental mill by accident. You bring on an associate that isn't quite in alignment. So you got to be able to spot this stuff, definitely.
When we turn to marketing, even for associates, there's the cost of what we pay per phone call, and not all phone calls become appointments, unfortunately. Then there's the cost of having somebody come in not ready to buy that much, or maybe nothing at all if it doesn't go well. That's a pretty high cost. Throw that in with an associate doctor. If you can't get this worked out and really understand how to pull the levers, when an associate comes in, you're going to feel lost. Like all you can do is just feed them your patients and sink to the bottom. You're not going to like it. So let's make a note of that. Today, you're doing well if you can just identify from this presentation that you're not hitting the mark.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.